Hello, and thank you for joining us today. I'm Kate McCready, Program Director for Open Publishing at the Big Ten Academic Alliance. I'm joined by Laird, the Open Publishing Team Lead at Penn State University, and by Matt Vaughn, who is the Open Publishing Librarian at Indiana University. Our topic today is the collective action that's happening across the Big Ten Academic Alliance libraries. So here is a little overview of what we're going to cover. First, I'm going to provide some background on the Alliance and the scholarly publishing peer group, where this work is situated. And then we're going to talk about the pilot project that we are engaged in and the goals and scope and why the various schools that are participating, why they chose to participate. And then we'll talk about some outcomes, lessons learned, and what's happening now, and what are the next steps. So what is the Big Ten Academic Alliance? So to give you a little context, it is a library consortia. The Center for Library Programs, where we have 19 members, is within the Big Ten Academic Alliance, but it's bigger than that. Across our institutions, we collaborate and take collective action on all sorts of areas: technology, education programs like graduate education. We also collaborate on finance areas, such as the procurement officers gather together to save money on purchases that they make. And then we have the libraries. Overall, we are run by our members. The provost and dean set the course, and our community network filled with peer groups, communities of practice, and interest groups, those groups take on the work. Within the libraries, we collaborate on all the things that libraries do. And just to give you a sense of our size, the Big Ten libraries steward over 1/5 of the print titles in the US, and more than half of those titles are held in a single Big Ten library. More than 2/3 of those are held in fewer than 3 Big Ten library locations. So you see, we are big, and we have a massive collection that we are stewarding. We also have a guiding star. So the deans in 2022 created this guiding star for us in order to really focus our work. So in order to advance a just, trustworthy, scalable, and sustainable open knowledge ecosystem, we need to make open, more equitable scholarship the lead purpose of BTAA consortial investment. So starting about 3 years ago, we started also collaborating on scholarly publishing. I conducted a landscape assessment across our Big Ten institutions. We identified areas of work that were difficult for the library publishers and university presses to accomplish. And then we proposed where we could implement collective action. And we brought 3 recommendations to the Big Ten library deans. Those 3 recommendations were supported by the deans, and we have been putting them all into action. And the first was that a bit over a year ago, we formed the Scholarly Publishing Peer Group. We actually recommended starting it as a community of practice, which is a little bit more informal, but the deans elevated our work and decided that we should be a peer group that can steward pilot projects and have more agency and more support. So our peer group now has 2 pilot projects underway. One is the Vended Services pilot, and the other is the Meru Aggregated Discovery System pilot. And today we're going to dive into the Meru Aggregated Discovery System pilot. So a couple things about this pilot. First, at the Big Ten Academic Alliance, we have an innovation model that allows us to try out new things. We start with pilots, and then if those are successful, we expand them to projects. And sometimes we do a couple pilots, and then we do a couple projects. And if they're successful after a few pilots and projects, we move those into programs. And Meru, just to give you some context, the Meru pilot is just at the very first stage of this model. So the framework for this pilot is a little different because of other work happening on Meru, the Next Generation Library Publishing Projects platform that you're going to hear a lot more about in a minute. So the Next Generation Library Publishing, or NGLP team, had been awarded an IMLS grant to do some further development on the platform. And NGLP combined that effort with the Big Ten's pilot project, and our aims, and in order to create a more synergistic project. So we worked on those things together and put them all into the same platform. So I'm now going to hand it over to Matt to go into more about that work.
Thank you, Kate. So in the next section, we're going to talk about the goals of the Meru pilot and our motivations for participating at Penn State and Indiana University. The short-term goal of this project is to build an aggregated collection of BTAA published works on the NGLP's Meru platform and to evaluate this tool's capacity to support the ingestion and display of fully structured publication metadata and content for a variety of publication types, regardless of the platform they were created on. You can go to the next slide. The longer term goals are to determine Meru's capacity to produce metadata for all publications, for use in discovery systems and preservation systems, and to identify options for the Alliance to work at scale. Next slide. So this graphic outlines the basic structure of the pilot timeline and deliverables. First, guided by input from the BTAA peer group, schemas, ingest protocols, and product requirements are identified. These, along with published content from 3 library publishers, are used to develop a test instance of Meru. The test instance is then evaluated for its potential to serve as a display interface and platform for discovery, preservation, and accessibility. Next slide. So working closely with Penn State and Indiana University, the NGLP team built and populated this pilot instance of Meru, a dynamic front-end display layer with published content in a variety of formats, including journals, dissertations, books, and bibliographies. This process included transforming selected content to align with Meru's content schema, loading that content into the test instance, and developing roadmap materials to help other library publishers adopt the NGLP infrastructure. Next slide. So over the 18-month pilot period, university representatives from the 2 partner campuses were responsible for providing necessary access to and any documentation for systems required for harvesting content, and also as a technical point of contact to facilitate the content migration. We participated in regular meetings with the project team once monthly during the pilot. We participated in quality assurance and content for the content ingested into Meru. We'll be completing a survey and interview at the conclusion of the pilot to evaluate our experience with the software content harvesting and service model. We'll also be participating in public webinars about the project and its progress. And we'll review and provide feedback on the deliverables, including a toolkit for other institutions that are interested in adopting Meru, and we'll also contribute to the final grant report. And then the NGLP team and Cast Iron Coding were responsible for the project management, software hosting, and the technical support for Meru. Next slide. So our motivations for participating included the increased visibility of our library publications. So while library publishers find strength in being small and agile and innovative, a shared publication platform has the potential to increase the visibility of each BTAA institution's publications by moving them from a small, somewhat siloed individual program into a more comprehensive collection. Shared metadata and the ability to search across all of the BTAA publications at once, and the creation of a larger and more diverse community for our publications also represents an opportunity to identify new connections between our separate works, potentially identifying opportunities for more engagement and citations for our authors. In addition, this initiative has the potential to increase the accessibility of our publications. A joint platform may allow BTAA member institutions to better pool their resources in meeting the challenge of accessibility remediation. A single shared platform can help to facilitate and streamline remediation processes. It's an opportunity for us to share resources. A single shared platform facilitates the centralization of search, storage, preservation, discoverability, and metadata integration. Library publishing programs are often undersupported, and a shared hosting and discovery platform has the potential to free up a great deal of time and resources across the BTAA. This shared platform could also be used to centralize and efficiently manage the preservation of the BTAA scholarly output. A preservation service like Clocks would now have a single contract with the BTAA and be able to harvest BTAA content from a single familiar source rather than multiple different platforms. And even if we continue to manage our preservation separately, the Meru platform could still serve as a backup source for our scholarly output. And it also has the potential to save us money on hosting and vendor costs. Hosting, storage, preservation, and discoverability can all be costly. Yet, library publisher needs in these areas are likely very similar across the BTAA and have the great potential to be centralized. So, next slide. So in this next section, we'll discuss what we've learned so far, what's happening with the project now, and what our next steps are. Next slide. So before I turn it over to Allie, I just want to talk a little bit about what we've learned so far at Indiana University. Our hope is that this pilot will demonstrate that Meru can provide an efficient, advanced, and well-resourced repository for our open access dissertations, our ETDs, and for those of other BTA member institutions. While there are a number of open access ETD aggregators, indexers, and repositories, these services tend to be under-resourced, technologically outdated, and minimally promoted. And Meru could provide a highly visible platform and a centralized workflow for our open access ETDs across the BTAA. It would, in addition, serve as a means to highlight and preserve these often overlooked resources and put them more directly in conversation with the rest of our collective research output. Indiana University also publishes several journals in JATS XML derived HTML. JATS is an important markup language for academic journal publishing, and we believe that full text HTML derived from JATS should become the standard over PDF only publication. JATS has advantages of being accessible, searchable, machine readable, layout independent, and we hope to eventually implement JATS workflows across all of our journals. So it was therefore important for us to see if NGLP and Meru could render our JATS source files as full text HTML publications. And I'll go ahead and turn it over to Allie now.
Thank you, Matt. So similarly, we had quite a few things that we wanted to learn about, and that we did learn about throughout this process. And for us, ingestion with the Meru platform was really something that we found was key. We needed to ensure that the journal content coming out of our OJS platforms was being collected and displayed correctly within the Meru layer. We noticed through this process that we at Penn State had some OAI PMH endpoint updates that needed to happen so that we could ensure that the content was being ingested and then displayed appropriately. And this also lent us an opportunity to be able to participate in some direct testing of this ingestion process with the cast iron coding developers who are supporting and developing Meru. We also are interested in continuing to investigate the possibilities for other types of publications. As Matt mentioned, there's more than just journals that are in Meru and are hoping to be in Meru, and books and bibliographies are two of our other large collections within the Penn State Open Publishing Program. What's unique about our publications is that we use Drupal for both our books and bibliographies, which is not a common platform for others. And so while we've started talking about what book ingestion looks like and displaying those book type content, we're really talking about more common platforms such as Pressbooks and how that ingestion process looks. So investigating deeper into pulling content out of other content management systems like Drupal is really important for us throughout this pilot project. Next slide, please. So now what's happening in the pilot project at the moment? First and foremost, bugs and incorrectly ingested data are being reviewed and remedied. Perhaps not surprisingly, anytime you're starting with a new platform that's being developed and going through, there's going to be known bugs, there are going to be ingestion errors and things that need to be tested. And so we've been going through throughout these monthly meetings and reviewing those errors and correcting and identifying where re-ingestion needs to happen once we've had those problems remedied and where other bugs are showing up that either are known or identifying new ones, and having that information shared with Cast Iron Coding for continued development of the Marrow platform. What we've just finished going through also is Marrow platform acceptance testing. So the NGLP team assigned all of us participating with some tasks to go through and ensure that we are able to complete things necessary in order for Marrow to work appropriately and to work for the goals and outcomes that we're hoping for from the pilot. So we went through and completed tasks both on the Marrow front end and also in the admin interfaces. And the final kind of current project, but next step, is community engagement and sharing those results with our larger BTAA scholarly publishing peer group and getting more feedback, and also including them in some acceptance testing as well to perform some of those tasks on their own. Next slide, please. And that leaves us with the next steps for the pilot project. We'll be reviewing the acceptance testing outcomes to make sure where things are aligning well with what we are hoping to achieve through this Marrow pilot project, and where perhaps more work needs to be put into the pilot. And that process is going to culminate in the pilot project report that we'll be drafting, that will be shared upwards with our deans, and also will help to guide the future work of this pilot. Recommendations for Marrow's use and continued development going forward will likely fall into kind of two avenues or two buckets. The first being that we're pleased with how things are going with the Marrow pilot, and we want to extend and expand it. As Kate mentioned in the beginning, we're not looking to make this too big too quickly, and so the next steps would be to bring in some additional BTAA library publisher content, perhaps another partner or two, for them to test out, for them to ingest their content, especially if it's slightly different from what Indiana, Iowa, and Penn State have been pulling into the Marrow platform, and to continue to test and enhance the platform, fix whatever bugs might still need to be addressed, and enhance the features that we're still hoping for. The other outcome could potentially be that we reassess the pilot and the goals, and we think, what do we need to think of differently? What didn't work, and what do we need to change our minds about in order to get a pilot like this Marrow pilot project to where we would like it to be? Other things that we're going to be thinking about as we draft this report and consider moving forward are just IMLS considerations. Due to the fact that the Next Generation Library Publishing Group did have an IMLS grant to help support the development of Marrow, and as Kate mentioned, that was a dual supportive role for Marrow, and unfortunately, like most or all IMLS grants at the moment, that's been canceled and withdrawn. And so the future of that grant and that support for Marrow is a bit unsure at the moment. However, there's still funding and support that BTAA has that we can provide through the pilot for this work with Marrow, and also the NGLP has other projects and other funding streams that are coming in to support their work. And so it would just be something for us to consider as we're looking forward to what the next phase of this pilot would look like. Next slide, please. And we thought we would end with a wonderful quote that we were able to pull from the landscape analysis that Kate did way back when we were starting the formation of our scholarly publishing peer group. That we're hoping that we're able to drive the platform creation and the resources and the infrastructure that library publishers need moving forward. And have more control and have library publishers be at the helm of this work rather than waiting on others or depending on others to do this for us. Thank you. And we'll be here for any questions that you might have.